Universal Credit, Vanishing Employers, and The Immigrant Who Did It by Lawson Akigbe summarize Margaret Thatcher. When the government of David Cameron rolled out universal credit under Ian Duncan Smith, it was presented as moral tidiness. Work would always pay. Complexity would vanish. The welfare state would be streamlined into a single rational payment under the Welfare Reform Act 2012. The premise, if your wages fall short of survival, the state will top them up. And thus we invented the polite British version of a wage subsidy, one that never calls itself that. If the Treasury guarantees a minimum income floor, why would a low-margin employer stretch wages beyond it? Why absorb costs the exchequer is willing to socialize? Quietly, without ceremony, parts of the private sector had their payroll risk underwritten by the taxpayer. The employer, like a well-trained butler, exits the scene. The claimant remains center stage. Thatcher's ghost in the letting office. This script has history. Under Margaret Thatcher, the right to buy reduced social housing stock and expanded private renting. If rents were unaffordable, housing benefit would make up the difference. Landlords, being attentive students of incentive structures, adjusted rents accordingly. Housing benefit expenditure climbed. Governments then complained about the bill, as if surprised by arithmetic. Once again, the structural actors faded. Once again, the recipient absorbed the blame. Enter the immigrant. But modern British politics cannot rest without a villain. And so, as wages stagnated and rents climbed, a more colorful explanation was summoned. Immigration. The story is now familiar. Wages are low because immigrants undercut them. Housing is expensive because immigrants occupy it. Public services strain because immigrants use them. What this omits is policy design. Take social care. Over the past 3 decades, successive governments introduced market-style reforms into care provision. Competitive tendering, cost compression, private operators, razor-thin margins. Care work became one of the lowest-paid, emotionally demanding sectors in the economy. Indigenous workers did the rational thing. Many left. You cannot pay the mortgage with gratitude and moral applause. The sector then recruited internationally. Migrants filled the vacancies, staffed care homes, supported the elderly, and kept the system from collapse. And then, magnificently, the same political class implied that migrants were the reason wages were low in the first place. It is a circular argument worthy of a Mobius strip, the care economy paradox. Here is the uncomfortable chain. Introduce market competition into care. Suppress costs to keep council budgets down. Wages fall. Domestic labor supply shrinks. Recruit migrants to sustain provision. Blame migrants for labor market pressures. At no stage does the wage-setting mechanism itself receive scrutiny. The funding model remains sacrosanct. The market must not be questioned. Only the workers within it may be. The political alchemy. The remarkable trick is this. Structural economic decisions are transmuted into cultural grievance. Low pay becomes a migration issue. Housing scarcity becomes a border issue. Underfunded care becomes a demographic issue. Meanwhile, employers benefiting from wage supplementation remain invisible. Landlords benefiting from housing benefit flows remain respectable. The design of the system remains unquestioned. The immigrant becomes the explanatory glue for policies that were, in fact, domestic choices. You cannot deregulate your way to dignity. An economy that depends on topping up wages through universal credit, subsidizing rents through housing benefit, and importing labor to sustain underpaid care work is not suffering from an invasion. It is suffering from structural incoherence. Markets allocate. They do not guarantee adequacy. When adequacy is politically required but structurally unfunded, the state intervenes. Then it complains about the cost. Conservatives often speak as though poverty is an unfortunate residue of personal failure. Yet poverty, low wages, and housing precarity follow logically from certain policy combinations. Flexible labor markets without wage growth mechanisms, reduced social housing without replacement supply, marketized care without sustainable funding. If those inputs are constant, the outputs are predictable. The final irony? The immigrant nurse, the care worker, the delivery driver, the very people stabilizing the system are cast as destabilizing it. It is rather like removing the foundations of a house, hiring someone to hold the walls up, and then accusing them of structural weakness. You cannot wish poor families away. You cannot outsource the consequences of economic design. And you cannot blame the people who keep the lights on for the wiring diagram drawn in Westminster.